Hey guys, Terry Red here, and in this video I am continuing my Future Pinball and BAM Essentials All-in-One video series. And in this video we are going to be talking about PinEvent V2 and my PinEvent V2 guide. And before we jump into this video, you guys should have already followed what was done in this video in part 1, which is to install the latest Future Pinball and BAM Essentials All-in-One package, which is a complete install of Future Pinball, the latest BAM update, the latest BAM OpenVR update, DMDExt, all of my guides in PDF format, and extra files and tools, and just a complete up-to-date package that gives you all the essentials you need for Future Pinball BAM all in one. No need to do installers or anything else. It's just easy, quick way to get everything all done in one shot with one zip file. So once you've done that, and you don't have to watch the entire video, it's actually a very quick thing. It's just this video covers all the stuff within this package, So once you've done that and have Future Pinball and BAM up and running, and you've got tables running and everything, then you come back to this video. So once you do that, then jump back in here. All right, so PinEvent. What the heck is PinEvent? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. So basically, we're going to be following my PinEvent V2 guide, which you will find in the Setup and Guides folder, and right in here. This is where you'll find it. And the PinEvent V2 guide is basically overall information about everything that is PinEvent related, what it does, what it uses, how you can do certain things with it. So basically, I'm just going to go right into it. So once you go into the guide, it shows you a couple of video demonstrations that you can like see some of that here, for example. Now this is going, wow, this is 3 years ago. Woo! That's the old version of PinEvent. So that's not PinEvent V2, but it's still the essentials of what we're talking about. So I'll just give you an example here. Just give it a second. So bottom line is PinEvent is all about me adding a new standard that I use across all my table updates and releases. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm talking about a standard for adding DOF, because I'm very particular about this, the quality of DOF that's added to the tables, the lighting, the effects, as well as adding PuP SSF for surround sound feedback that can be supported in a cabinet, about adding PuPDMD, so that would be a modern display with animations, videos, modern fonts, overlays, a backglass, the whole kit and caboodle, as well as now that has expanded to like fleep sounds for mechanical sounds for surround sound feedback, ball rolling, and now all tables having physics, and new lighting, new shadows. So basically, a complete modern update for a future pinball table. That's basically what PinEvent is, and it's all adhering to my own particular standard and features that I add to every single table. So the idea is when you download a PinEvent table and its PuP-Pack, you'll have the exact same features on every single one, and you'll know exactly how to set it up, how to configure it, or it may just automatically work with what you have in your system. So that was the whole idea of what PinEvent's all about. So PinEvent basically equals Terry Red releases. That's the easiest way of thinking about it, with all the standardized features I add to every one of my releases. And this guide is basically about helping you to know what you need to use those extra features, and what those extra features are, and all the other information that is needed for it. So yeah, that was a lot to go through. So you have the whole table of contents at the beginning here, and we'll just be working our way through this, and I'll explain some things, maybe demonstrate some things. So we'll just start going through it. So yeah, so as I just said here, I created PinEvent to have standard features for my own stuff. And so what does it have? Now, some of the features, this is not all of them, but basically DOF. So DOF is for the lighting on cabinets and feedback for solenoids, shaker motors, that kind of thing. Night mode is so that you can turn off DOF directly and then have it switch to just sounds or whatever else. That's the idea of night mode. Adding Pinup Player and PuP-Packs, so that's what I just talked about, all the videos and then SSF, as I mentioned. Now, PupStream is another one. So basically, PupStream is, well, actually, hold on. That's in another video, I do believe. Yeah, yes, so that's this one here. So the idea of PupStream is so that you can display a PuP-Pack, for example, on a secondary display or a dummy display, and then be able to stream that PuP-Pack into Future Pinball, like directly into the actual game itself. We're not talking about having a window display on top of Future Pinball. We're talking about it's now literally part of Future Pinball. It's a texture that is streaming everything it sees in those locations. That's what PupStream basically is, and that's something I add to all my PinEvent releases, except for PinEvent Lite, but we'll get to that. All right, so what else do we got? We don't have to use extra apps for DOF or PUP, so that basically means we don't need something like DOFLinx, for example, like we used to years ago, because we can use DOF and PUP directly now. And by doing that, we get to use all their features. And then I've added it so you can have automatic global settings for every table, so you don't have to make changes to the table at all. It'll just automatically work with the settings that you want, or you can have customized settings per table if you ever want that for any reason. And it works in all modes, so desktop, cabinet, and VR. So what is it used with? Well, all my tables, like I said. The one thing you need to understand, though, is that the extra features, these features are all optional. They're not like mandatory. So you don't have to use DOF. You don't have to use Pinup Player or PuP-Packs or SSF or any of the other features. If you want to just play it as a normal Future Pinball table, then you can have all those features disabled, and it'll be like no different than any other Future Pinball table, except for the fact that I add physics and all the extra modern lighting and shadows and everything else I also add. All right, so and all this is just basically describing exactly what I just said. Okay, so how does PinEvent work exactly? Like, what does it do? So basically, when you load a PinEvent table and you start it up, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to do a check for the PinEvent Settings text file. That's normally supposed to be located in your scripts folder. So it's going to check for the existence of this file. And then it's going to look at that file, and then it's going to check what your PinEvent settings are for whatever mode you are running in. So if it's a desktop mode, cabinet, or VR, you have your own settings for each mode. And then it'll also check the settings for PupStream or anything else that may be in here. And the idea is this is a global file that is used for all PinEvent tables automatically. And if it finds this file, and then it will remember those settings, and then what it's going to do is it's then going to apply those settings to the PinEvent code, and then it will then, as a result, do a check based on what your settings are. It's going to check if you want a DOF, it's going to check if DOF exists. If it exists, it will then enable those features. If you want PUP features enabled, like PUP SSF or PUPDMD or PupStream, it'll check to see if you have PUP installed. Pinup Player, PUP is Pinup Player, and if that's not installed, then it'll disable those features. But if it is installed, then it will enable whatever features you chose to enable, and then it'll go ahead and apply those, and then make those features work. If they can't find any of those, then they're all disabled, and then it acts just like a normal Future Pinball table. All right. Now, if for whatever reason it can't find this file at all, then it will automatically resort back to whatever the default settings are in the table script settings. So these are the fallback settings or the custom settings for the table. So the idea is that you can enable this, and then this table's settings will be used instead of this file. So think of this as global settings for every table as the defaults, and think of this as the custom settings if you want to bypass that and use something different for this table only. All right, so that's basically what it does. It goes through that process to check everything, and then manages everything based on what it detects, what's working. It's quite more involved than how I'm explaining it, but that's the bottom line of how it works. Okay, so it works with Pinup Player PuP-Packs and PuP-Packs are basically a collection of media in one folder that is used for the table. So in the case of Sonic, for example, this is the Sonic Pinball Mania PuP-Pack, and all the videos, sounds, everything are all in here. And then you can choose what kind of a setup is used based on a cabinet or a single screen, two screens, three screens, or VR. You know, you have options to change how this is used. All right, so that's all the bottom line of how this is working. And PinEvent Lite. So PinEvent Lite is basically the same thing as a PinEvent 2 table. The only difference is it has basic DOF and it does not have PuPDMD or PupStream features. Those are features that will get added later on. So you would have to use DMDExt to mirror the DMD to your cabinet. Otherwise, it's basically the same. All the other features are the same. It's mostly just the DOF is much more basic, and PupDMD is not added yet. That stuff will get added later on. It was a way of me getting tables out much quicker, you know, to be enjoyed now, and then I can come back to them later on and then update them with the much nicer, you know, PUP display for the score and the videos and all that. All right. So this disclaimer here. Bottom line is, all this is saying is please don't use the name PinEvent at all, because PinEvent represents my specific updates or mods or table releases. Because when someone gets a PinEvent table, they have a very specific expectation of what it will have, how it will work, what it will support. And no one else is going to be doing that. So I don't want any confusion. That's the bottom line. I'm fine with my tables being modded, but understand I'm not going to support them. I'm only going to support the tables I release and mod myself directly. So I want PinEvent to represent my releases only. That's what this whole thing is referring to. I don't want anyone who adds DOF or PUP to a table to think that that is a PinEvent table. That's not at all what it is. And if you want to add PUP or DOF to a PinEvent table, well, then that's why me and Jay Lou made the all-in-one example table that you can download and use the code from that to update a future pinball table for DOF and physics and SSF, you know, and a lot of this is stuff that I took from my PinEvent table or my PinEvent code to make that happen. So the idea is, you know, I'm not trying to make it so that no one else can have DOF or PUP. I went out of my way to help Jay Lou to make another example table so that you guys can do that. And then that way you don't have to, you know, use PinEvent code, because PinEvent code is way, way more complicated than what we have in the all-in-one example table. So trust me, you don't want to use it. All right. Alrighty. All right, so what do you need for PinEvent features to work? Well, bottom line, I already mentioned it. You need the Future Pinball BAM All-in-One's Essentials package installed, which this guide is now a part of. So once you've done all that, well, then you basically have everything you need already installed and updated for Future Pinball. So that's the bottom line. That's what that's talking about. So the requirements for DOF and PUP features. So in other words, I need to reiterate, a PinEvent table does not require Pinup Player or PUP installed at all. But if you want to use those features, you need those installed. That's the bottom line. So anyone who doesn't have those installed, you could either, you know, use something like Pinup Popper Baller Installer, which will get, you know, all that installed, like for as far as Pinup Player and other stuff. Or you can install it what you need yourself manually, and that's what these links are for. So if you want to install Pinup Player, well then this link will take you to the main site for Nailbuster's site, where you will normally get the main install, and then this would be the update link, which would then give you the latest update. Now we are currently on 1.5. 1.5 is the newest version, so that is the version I am saying we have to have now, because any updates I do in the future may make use of 1.5 Pinup Player features. So therefore, if you don't have it, the table, those features won't work for you. So that's why I'm making everyone understand that we're going to need 1.5 or higher from this point on going into the future. Okay, and then that's what these links are for. I'm not going to show you how to install that, because that's what these links are for. Okay, and there may be newer updates But I'll show you how to set it up though. All right. Honestly, the install is basically downloading a zip file, extracting it, and then going through the setup anyway. So, don't need to show you that. So, DOF feedback and lighting. So you basically need to have the newest DOF file software installed, and that you can get that here. And then you need to make sure that your config files from DOF config tool is updated as well, because I might have new files for a new table that you don't have in your system yet. So that's what that's about. And if you want DOF features supported, and also if you want to be able to use DOF, you have to make sure that if you have DOFLinx installed and running, it has to be not running at all, because it will interfere with the DOF on PinEvent, because they're both trying to do the same thing, and PinEvent tables use DOF directly, and DOFLinx is another program that will try to do stuff, and it may cause confusion, may even cause a crash possibly. So that's why you have to have DOFLinx not running at all, not disabled, not running at all while using a PinEvent table. And I show you how you can manage all that from Pinup Popper Baller Installer tips guide. So it's nothing to stress over. All right, so this is probably the biggest issue you'll ever have with Future Pinball and with PinEvent PuP or DOF. Windows security, Windows Defender, or UAC problems. The bottom line is you need to make sure that Future Pinball is not running as administrator. You need to make sure that BAM is not running as administrator. You need to make sure that PuP and everything else you're using is not running or registered as administrator. All right, it's very important. So at a minimum, you have to have the exceptions added to Windows Defender. If you don't do that, it will restrict BAM and Future Pinball from working correctly and communicating with DOF and PuP. Very important, so make sure you have all that sorted before you even start any of this. Now, user account control, normally that's not a problem. You leave it at the defaults, but if you have it super restrictive on your system, it could possibly cause an issue and block things on your system. But normally you shouldn't have to touch it. But then we have this here if you're having problems with DOF, for example. So that's what that's basically talking about. Now, if you have custom versions of Windows, like for example Ghost Spectre, basically people who have installed the super light version of Ghost Spectre, for example, DOF won't work for them, but it does if they install the compact version. So basically any custom version of Windows, be wary of, because they may mess up DOF and it won't work, and there's nothing I can do to help you there. So just be aware of that. So if you're using Ghost Spectre, for example, make sure it's the compact version, not the light/super light versions, okay? Okay, so PinEvent V2 settings. Well, I kind of already talked about that. So that needs to be installed into your scripts folder. It should already be there. However, if there's a problem with a file or if it's missing, you can find another copy of that in here with this guide that we're doing in this video right now. So you can always copy this file back into your scripts folder and start from scratch, okay? So you also have to make sure it's not blocked, but that's the case with any file on Windows, so you can always, it's just a text file, but you never know. You never know. All right, and basically this is required if you want to have global settings to make it easier. So you can make one set of changes to this file if you need to, and that automatically works for every PinEvent table. So that's what it's there for, and you should ideally already have it in there. And I literally just talked about this. So basically all the settings in here are your global settings. So you can change your DOF, PuP, or SSF for desktop mode, or for cabinet mode, or for VR. So when Future Pinball launches and starts in that mode, it will then use the settings in each of these sections. And PuP Stream, by default, this is actually set to false. I don't recommend enabling that until you have everything running and working first, because it may not work for everyone, and it may even cause crashes depending on what you have on your system. So we'll get back to that later on. But these are all the settings that you can enable for that, and the displays you can use it with. And then the night mode can be enabled here. By default, it's not. And then you can set what key you want to use with it. And tilt bob. Same thing. If you want to use a tilt bob key with PinEvent tables, because you have a real tilt bob in your cab, well then you would set that in here. And then if you want to have specific DOF or PUP SSF things enabled or disabled or enabled to your particular preference, then you can do that globally here, and that will be applied to all tables as well. All right, so that's what this file is all about. And the PinEvent v2 custom table settings, well, I already mentioned that. So that's in every PinEvent tables table script near the top. Just look for this section here, PinEvent custom table settings, and then you'll find it here. If you want to use these settings instead of the settings, not here, instead of using the global settings, like maybe one table needs to be different for some reason, you can then set this to true, and then it's going to use whatever settings you have applied in here. Okay. Now, if it can't find, I mentioned before, if it can't find this file, it will automatically use these settings, whether you have this true or false. It'll automatically use these settings. All right. All right. And now I can talk about it later, but if you by chance start a table and you get an error of that it can't find the text file, the PinEvent settings text file, that's a security issue you have on your computer, so you have to sort that out. I can't help you there. But if you can't sort it out, then you can set this to true, and then that will bypass that file, and then it'll work after that. But it just means you're going to have to do your settings for each table as a result. Okay? All right, so Pinup Player. So let's assume you have Pinup Player installed. It's the newest version. You're up to date. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you have the display set up correctly for the ones we are actually going to use for PinEvent at the very least. Okay. Now this is going to be different for everyone depending on what they're using. If you have a multi-screen cabinet, well then you're going to be doing multiple displays already for that. You're going to set those up. If you're doing this, just for a single screen, well, then you're only going to be setting up the full DMD, and that's it. I'll quickly just show you exactly how that process is done. Now, what I'm describing here is what each display is for the PUP displays that you can configure, and where they should be, how they should be set. Like that's what all this is about. So again, for us, we're only using the full DMD/apron if it's a single screen. Otherwise, you're going through the process for all these other ones if you're a multi-screen cabinet user. Now, I'm not going to do all these in this video. Just follow the process here. But I will mention about, how you do that. And the way you do that is you have to go into your Pinup system folder. So like for example, I have a baller installer set up here, and then you go in a Pinup system, and then you can do it a couple ways. You can either run the PuP-Pack editor and do it from there, or you can run this batch file, Pinup Player config displays bat. If you run that, then it will bring this up, and this is the Pinup Player settings. So just like this tells you, about where you should set them up. So in this case, this is the topper. We don't use that, so we're fine there. But if you want to, adjust it or reposition it, you just do that, and that's it. And then you can move it where you want. But in our case, because we're not doing this on a multi-screen cabinet, we're just doing this in a single screen setup. We're just using the apron full DMD. So for that one, we can position it like in the corner, for example. Okay, so we just grab it here and just put it where you want. Now you can put it in either corner. I normally put it in the top left corner, so that way it covers the normal place where the future pinball DMD would have been. Now make sure it's not off screen, or you'll get like an error at some point, or it'll try to reposition it for you. But you have to have it within this space somewhere, right? You can't have it like halfway on a screen. So what I do is I position it, I roughly size it, and then I hit the 16:9 button. And then that gets it to the perfect, it uses the width and then makes a proper 16:9 ratio, because that is what is required for the full DMD. So it says 16:9 is a requirement. So that's what's saying right here. So again, you can make this as wide as you want. and then just hit 16 by 9, boom, it's set. And that's required so that everything scales correctly, okay? And then when you've got that set, and then if you have to do these other ones because you have a cabinet set up, go through the process. Unless you've already done this, then you don't have to worry about that. And then you hit save. And that's all there is to it. There's really not much more to it than that. It's quite simple. You just install PUP. You download the zip files. You'll install it into this folder, Pinup System, and then you'll go do exactly what I just showed you. As it shows you how to install it. Like basically, you normally just extract the files into this folder, and then you Pinup Player register. You just right-click that. You do that as administrator in this case. Okay. You hit yes, and then it does the same thing, right? You just go through the same process. I've already set this up, so I could just save the settings, and then it saves those settings to, where is it? Pinup Player, where's that file? It's been a while. There it is. It saves it to this text file here, Pinup Player INI. All right, and that's it. That's really for Pinup Player. That's all there is, man. All you got to do is set up the displays, position them, and you're good to go. All right, so surround sound feedback. So on Future Pinball, if you want to use surround sound feedback, that's done through Pinup Player because Future Pinball only supports stereo sound. So basically, that's included in the PuP-Pack. So if you go into like say a PuP-Pack folder, that's included in the PUP sounds. So all these sounds here are used for surround sound feedback. The table loads them and uses them directly. And what PUP SSF sound is, actually I don't know if I can quite show it on here. Yeah. Okay, so PUP SSF is basically if you have a cabinet set up, you can have 4 transducers inside of the cabinet. They're kind of like shakers, little shaker speakers. And then when the game plays mechanical sounds, it'll play them, like for your flippers, slings, or when the ball hits things, the bumpers, all that. It will play them in a position based on where they are on the table, and then it will sound like you have them actually inside your cabinet. Or if you play this in a home theater setup, you'll sound like you're inside of a pinball cabinet. It's actually very cool. And if you have just headphones, well, then it's just going to position them left to right, appropriately as well. So it's very cool. You'll hear things like the ball rolling around and all that. So that's what surround sound feedback is. And for us with PinEvent, all the tables support it, and that's basically what this is describing. Now, the thing to understand is if you have more than one sound card in your computer for surround sound feedback, you have to then manually configure your second one if that's what you're using for your SSF. So there's a link here, and it tells you how to set that up in PUP. You basically have to go to the Pinup Player INI and then make this change here. And then you change the sound device index. You just try each number, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, until you get the sound device that you use for SSF working. That's all there is to it. There's no label, there's no easy way. You just have to kind of try each one until you get the one that works. And that's about it. It's really not much more than that. Now, the one thing you have to understand with Future Pinball and SSF is Future Pinball sounds, the game sounds are very loud. All right. So when you play, you may not think you have surround sound feedback working, but you may have to reduce Future Pinball's game sound down a lot so that it matches the levels of surround sound feedback. And then you use your master volume and increase both to match as you need. And you have to adjust Future Pinball's volume per table, unfortunately. There's no global setting that does it for every table, unfortunately. All right. Okay. The great evil for PinEvent tables and PuP-Packs on Future Pinball. That is the Future Pinball Backbox display. So Future Pinball, unlike Visual Pinball, or FX really, has full support for displaying a complete functional backbox or translate or backglass onto a second screen without using extra software. So if you click on the translate, that's what this is. So it can do DMDs or multiple displays, lights, visuals, all that. It's all built into Future Pinball, and it will handle a second screen at the same time. It's actually kind of unique in that respect. The problem with that is when we're running a PinEvent table and we want to have, the nice looking, let's go a second here. If we want to have the nice looking PuP-Pack displayed, right? Well, if we have the Future Pinball Backbox being displayed on here, when we try to display the PuP-Pack, the Backbox is going to cover all or part of the PuP-Pack, and it's going to cause lots of problems. So the bottom line is we don't want the Future Pinball Backbox enabled at all while running a PinEvent table with a PuP-Pack. So there's a few ways you can take care of that, because you can't disable it directly in Future Pinball on a per table basis. There's not like an options setting you can set that's saved to the table or anything like that. So there's a few methods you can do. You can either use a front end to disable that option before launching Future Pinball, and you can do that either on a per table basis, which is how Pinup Popper does it, or you can set up a separate PinEvent emulator that when it launches Future Pinball tables, it always has it disabled. The third method is you can use a batch file to make the changes, depending on if you're using a different front end, or if you're not using any front end at all, then you can use a batch file that will make those changes before launching Future Pinball. And that is what I've included. Where are we here? In the Future Pinball folder. So the start FP bat files are there for that purpose. So if you want to run a PinEvent table with a PuP-Pack, then all you got to do is click on this one and double click on that, and that will make the changes for you automatically and start Future Pinball. Or this one if you want DMDExt also to run. This is intended for when you're not using Pinup Popper or a front end. Okay, so that's because a lot of people will exit Pinup Popper, run a table directly from Future Pinball themselves with no front end, and then they'll have this kind of problem where you have part of the PuP-Pack displaying, but then you got the Future Pinball Backbox covering the rest of it, and it's all messed up. So that's what this is all about. All right, and this is telling you how to display the settings you need to display in the registry, and they're talking about these two settings right here. The second monitor for Backbox, which is this right here, and the arcade mode, which is used for cabinet view. So you normally need both of those enabled to make this work correctly, and you need both of them disabled if you want that to not be used at all, okay? And that's what these commands here are talking about, and that's what Pinup Popper is using, and that's what these batch files are also using. Because if you look at it, near the top, you can see those same commands being used right here, okay? And then the 0 at the end of each one means disabled. If they were 1, like it shows here, that means it would be enabled, okay? So with Pinup Popper, there's an easy solution, which I can talk about later on. Or I actually did show it in another video, but the bottom line is that you would use my Popper and Baller Installer Tips Guide, which you can find in here. And it goes through the whole thing explaining what I just told you about, when you run a PinEvent table with a PuP-Pack. You need to then make it so that you go into Games Manager and you'll select, hold on a second, we'll get there. You'll select PinEvent and Games Manager, and then what that will do is that will then disable the Future Pinball Backbox for this table specifically. All right, and you can do that on a per table basis. All right, or you can adjust your launch script so that it does it for every table automatically if you're only running PinEvent tables, and then that'll allow the Future Pinball Backbox to automatically be disabled, and then only the PuP-Pack will be displayed and nothing else, and everyone's happy. Okay, I know there's a lot. That's a lot to talk about, but that's the single biggest problem that everyone has when running PuP-Packs with PinEvent tables. So that's why it's important to go through that and that you guys have a better understanding. Okay, so you have easy options now, with both this and Pinup Popper to take care of that for you. It's not hard. It's not hard once you understand that. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on about how PinEvent supports tilt bob features because Future Pinball doesn't have a native tilt bob support. So it has to be added to a table. And with PinEvent, I've made that standard work for all PinEvent tables. So to use it, you have to enable that in your table script here, or sorry, not table script, in PinEvent settings down here. Analog nudge tilt bob. So you just set this to true, and then you need to specify what key you're going to use. So each key has a key code, and that's what's listed right here. So by default, it's set to 20, and 20 is T. So you have T, 20. If you wanted it to be U, then it'd be 22. So you just figure out what key you want to be your tilt bob key. It has to be a key. It can't be a gamepad button. It has to be a key. Okay? And then just make sure that it's something that's not being used in Future Pinball. Now, by default, Future Pinball uses T for test. So just be sure that you're fine with using that. I don't know of any tables that actually use that, and if they do, it's not a big deal. But so far, all of my updates don't use that. So it's not a concern because I make sure they work. So don't worry about that. Just make sure you are using a key that's unused. All right, so, and that's the case for that. Oh, let me close that. All right. Or you can also set that in, if you're using custom settings for the table, then same idea. You can enable that true and do the right key code. And there you go. And the debounce time, that's, when you nudge it and then this makes contact, it'll wait this amount of time in milliseconds, so that's 2 seconds, before it allows another tilt warning to register. Because for those who don't understand what a tilt bob is, well, that's what you see here. This is inside a cabinet, and then this is metal, and this is metal. And basically, if the cabinet gets shaken enough, this will bob back and forth. And then if this metal makes contact with this metal ring, that's the same as pushing a button on like a gamepad controller, and then that will then register back into Future Pinball, into the code I added to the table, and then it'll be like, oh, tilt warning. So it's the same thing as getting a tilt warning. And if you keep doing that too many times, you'll get a tilt. Okay, that's why it's a tilt bob. All right, so real DMD and LCD DMD. So I used to support this on the first version of PinEvent. So if you look at this old video, you'll see that I used to support it. For regular size DMD, the 4x1 standard, you could have it be an LCD like this, and you could have this output to a real DMD with the same kind of visuals. So as of PinEvent V2, that is no longer the case because the reality was it wasn't worth the support when you consider that we have DMDExt that works great with Future Pinball, and this will automatically mirror Future Pinball's DMD anyway. So it was a lot of extra work to try to accommodate this size DMD instead of doing this new standard, which is what pretty much all new tables are doing now. Like for real pinball tables and for original tables on Visual Pinball and Future Pinball. The 16x9 standard is now the full DMD, as we call it, standard, is what everyone is using now. So that's why it was extra work for very little payoff, and I had to compromise to make it all work together. So now I just only do this as a standard for all tables now. So I no longer do a 4x1. So now that's what this is all talking about. So now for PinEvent V2 tables, you can use the PuP-Pack display either on the third display here or on the back glass, and I'll show you more about that later on. PinEvent Lite tables, however, don't have this option whatsoever. So for those tables, you have to use DMDExt to mirror the Future Pinball DMD to a separate DMD display or a real DMD. If it's virtual, you could still display that on a monitor like on here, or in my case, I have one in my apron, so you can display it there as well, right? So just so you understand, why that's no longer in here. So yeah, and you can also use DMDExt at the same time as well. So if you have like a cabinet with this kind of setup, but you also have a separate DMD or a real DMD, you could do the PuP-Pack and the DMDExt DMD at the same time. You know, there's nothing holding you back from being able to do that. Okay, and then you can choose to run DMDExt from Pinup Popper, which is what this is right here. By adding PinEvent in this section here, it's going to disable the future Pinball Backbox, and the way I have it set it up, it will also disable DOFLinx. And if you add this one, then that means it's going to run DMDExt for this table. Okay, the way I have it set up. You may have it different on your launch script, but that's the way it's set up. All right, so PuPDMD, well, I pretty much just got done talking about that. So that's this guy right here. You know, it's so that you have the modern display, just like a typical Stern or a Jersey Jack. You know, that's what the full DMD is the modern display down here.
Michael Myers, he's here in Haddonfield.
Let's just jump ahead there. So this is an example of where we don't have the full DMD being displayed down here. We actually have it up here, and then the normal Future Pinball DMD with a DMDExt is down here, right? So, but today, because this is the old standard, now the back glass is just a simple back glass, and everything is focused on the full DMD display now, okay? So that's what PuPDMD is all about, and that's what it's explaining about the features and the options you can use. It can be displayed on, you know, a separate screen, a full DMD separate screen, like what I have on my cabinet, or if you only have a 2-screen, you can have it then display on top in your back glass screen, or if you have a single screen setup, then for like a desktop setup, you can do that as well. I don't know if I have it shown in here. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, no, that was this one here. Yeah. So you can also have it display on a desktop as well. And you have 2 options for that now. You can have this option, which is PuP Stream, which is what I talked about earlier, where it streams the PuP display into Future Pinball, or you also have a windowed option now. And that's new. That's new as of... well, today, basically. You know, all my PinEvent tables are going to have that added as an update, or as an option in the PuP-Packs now. That's a new option. So that's what option 6 will be. 1 screen windowed for single screen users. Okay? So PuP-Pack Options, well, that's basically what I just got done talking about. So what that means is if you go into a PuP-Pack, let's see here. So you're going to have 6 options. Okay? So the first one is 0. That's if you just want surround sound feedback. You don't want any videos, no videos or anything like that. Or if you're a single screen desktop player, you know, you just choose that option and then you have no videos at all. Okay. Now, actually, before I go any further, the whole point of how this works is that to choose an option, you basically just go into the PuP-Pack folder, and you do this for each PuP-Pack. And you just double click on the option that matches your setup. So if you have a 3-screen cabinet like what I have here, 1, 2, 3, then you would run this one. You just, oh, my hard drive's got to spin up, so it's taking a moment there. Hold on. Yeah, okay, just give it a second here. Yeah, I have external hard drives connected, but they went to sleep, and then so whenever I do something like this, I have to wait till they wake up sometimes for it to show up again. So just give it a moment. Come on, you stinker. Oh, actually, no, I know why. I know why that's not showing. Hold on a second here. Hold on. Yeah, okay, I see. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Those files were different for a reason, for testing, so ignore that. So normally when you install one, not the baller installer default table, but normally when you run these PuP-Pack files, the options, when you run it, normally it'll pop up with something like this to let you know. Now the baller installer retroflare table won't do that, but it is copying the files over, okay, just so that you understand. So the idea is you go into the folder, you choose what you want, and then you run it, and then it'll tell you, okay, the files have been copied, make sure you have these enabled, blah, 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 just, you know, all the standard stuff I've already been telling you. So that's if you want this type of setup with 3 screens. If you have a 2-screen setup, so that means you only have this, and it's a 16 by 9 screen, then you run this guy here. Okay. If you have only a 2-screen setup and you have an older screen like a 5 by 4 or a 4 by 3, then you would run this guy here. Okay. And then if you're someone who happens to have a square type single screen, which some people do, believe it or not, or they have one of these vertically set up, then you could do a 1 by 1 and then use that. Okay. And then if you're someone who has a single screen setup, for for something like this, then you can do this for PuP Stream. That's only if you're going to use a dummy plug monitor and streaming it in, which we'll talk about later. Then you can do this one. Or if you're going to try to use this with Future Pinball running in windowed mode, then you would do this one. But there's an extra step that's required. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So yeah, that's a lot that I had to kind of go through there. So that's basically what all this is describing, okay? So what this is doing is it's basically copying the settings for each layout from these folders, and it's these files here that get copied in, and then this file tells you what option got copied over, and then this picture tells you what it should look like, okay? That way you can confirm what is being actively used right now. So if I change this to like a 3-screen setup, then if I do option selected, it's showing you what you have, like what what it's going to be trying to use, okay, based on what you've given it. Or if you do this one, same thing. That's what it will look like, because the full DMD is now on the backblast screen, and same thing with this one. If you check that, same idea, that's what it's going to look like. And then for this one, that's what it'll look like. Okay? And it's telling you all the information that you need to know. And if you do this one, same idea. It's telling you what it'll look like and what you need to have. Okay? So I just wanted to make sure you guys understand that. So let's go down here. And also, if you're not sure which one's which, all you got to do is click on this, how to choose a PuP-Pack option. And then it shows you every option and how they're going to look like and what they will be using. Like what your backglass ratio needs to be if that's what you're using. And it tells you down here what you need to use and what the ratios need to be. So all the information is right there, guys. Yeah. So, and this is exactly what I just got done telling you. It's showing you an example, and there you go. Now, there's only one option that requires an additional step, okay? That would be option 6. So option 6, if you choose that, it's going to copy a PuP and init bat file. So it's the only one that does that. So this file is basically going to be run when the table starts and the PuP-Pack starts. It looks for this file, and if it sees it, it'll run whatever it's in it. And it's a batch file, remember? So if we look inside, it's basically describing to you what it's going to do and how this works with Future Pinball running in windowed mode. You basically have to make the changes here for your playfield resolution screen, and same thing with this one. And once you make those changes, that's it. You save the file. And then when it runs, it's then going to force Future Pinball into a borderless windowed mode, as long as Future Pinball was run in windowed mode. Okay, that's basically what this is about. It's trying to make it all look nice and good for you. But we'll go over more of that in a separate video, which is going to be done for these two options. Okay, so there's separate guides for that and a separate video, because I don't want to have too much in this one video. Okay, so that's for single screen users only. And if you want to run it in VR, you would also choose these options, because with VR, you could choose one of these options if you want, because it doesn't use the backglass, right? It only needs the full DMD. So that's why it also mentions VR for both of these as well, right? Okay. All right, so now we're on to PuP-Stream, one of the more confusing features of PinEvent. So I talked about it earlier, what PuP-Stream was. So PuP-Stream is basically a feature that will capture a PuP-Pack display and then stream that into Future Pinball as a texture so that you could see it actually in the game instead of on a separate window. Now, there's only one problem with that, is that the PuP-Pack can't be covered by another window. So the idea is it's basically going to look and search for where the full DMD is located. So if you have the full DMD located on this monitor, it would then capture from that area and then show it in the game. If you have it located, say, in this location here, but on one single desktop screen setup, but the Future Pinball is running on full screen, well, it can't see the PuP-Pack because it's being covered by Future Pinball, but it'll still try capturing that same area. So you won't see the PuP-Pack, right? So it has to be on a separate display area for it to work. So what PinEvent has done is basically I have it all set up so that it can automatically make it work on multiple areas, whether it be for a cabinet setup, a desktop setup, or a VR setup. As long as the PuP-Pack is not covered by anything else, then it can work. Now, for a cabinet setup, that's easy. You know, like, I mean, if you're on a cabinet, well, then you're going to have it displaying on a separate screen anyway, so it'll capture that, and then it'll show it either on the apron or on the playfield, depending on the table and what features they have. If you have a single screen setup, well, that's a problem because, well, Future Pinball's covering it, right? So for that, you would have to use basically a dummy plug. And oh, actually, okay, well, that's talked about in a separate guide. That we'll talk about that in the single screen setup guide in another video. But the bottom line is, you could display the PuP-Pack on a fake monitor that's displayed off screen, and then it'll stream from that into Future Pinball. But again, that'll be covered in a separate video. So the idea is when the table starts up, it'll start up the PuP-Pack, and then we'll capture that and then put it into the table. So basically, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the problems here, and then we'll do a demonstration. So the problem with PuP-Stream is if you don't have the Future Pinball Backbox display disabled, as you're supposed to when you run a PuP-Pack with PinEvent tables, then what will happen, as you can see here, is it's going to try capturing from the same area where the PuP-Pack was, and then it's going to display that into the Future Pinball texture over and over and over and over again. It's kind of like an infinity mirror, basically. You don't want that, and it'll make things go all messed up, and it'll run terribly slow and all that. So that's why I have PuP-Stream disabled by default. Okay? So if you run into these problems, you're not disabling the backbox as you were supposed to. The Future Pinball Backbox. And that's why it says read the Future Pinball Backbox section for more information on how to do that. All right, so once you have all that sorted, so the idea is you're going to have to enable PuP-Stream. So to do that, you would go into your scripts folder and PinEvent V2 settings. And then first of all, you have to make sure that PuP is enabled, PuPDMD is enabled for the mode you're playing in. Now, I'm going to demonstrate in desktop mode. So I have it enabled here for the DMD, and I also have it enabled for SSF. And then you have to come down to the PuP-Stream settings, which has PuP-Stream right here. Now, by default, it's set to false, so you have to make sure it's set to true if you want to use it. Now, all these other settings for PuP-Stream, for the windows and everything else, leave those alone. You don't need to change them. But I added the option just in case you wanted to customize it, stuff, or if you wanted to display a different window than a PuP display. You can actually technically display any window, and it'll work. But you have to have the proper name for it, and that window can't be covered. All right? So once you have all this set up, then you just save this, and you're good to go. Now, if you don't want to set it in this for all tables, you can set it in the table script under the PinEvent custom settings if you want as well. All right. So once you have that set up and ready to go, then the other thing you have to make sure of is you have to make sure your PUP display is set up correctly. I've already done that. Basically, I have a, kind of like a secondary monitor set up here. But if you had a fake monitor, it would be positioned here. And this is my actual main screen that I'm playing on right now. And we want to set up the PUP display so that it's positioned over there. Now, I've already done that. So this is my apron full DMD. I actually have it positioned off screen onto my other TV that I have hooked up. So that's why you can't see it. All right. So once your PUP displays are properly set up like I showed earlier, then the only other thing you have to do is you have to go into your PuP-Pack folder, which in this case we're going to be doing Sonic. So I go in there and then I choose the correct PuP-Pack option because I'm doing this in a single display and I'm using PupStream. I'm going to be with a full screen setup, not a windowed setup, and I'm using a fake dummy screen type setup. Then I would run this, okay? And then it tells that, okay, yep, option 5 is what's being used. All right. So because it's not windowed, we don't have to do any extra setup. That'll be a separate video altogether. So that's all good to go. So basically all you have to do now is run the table. So what I do is I run it from the batch file here that says PinEvent PuP-Pack. Because what that's going to do is that's going to automatically disable the backbox for you. So what that's going to do, I'll show you after I get this loaded up. If you go into the settings, you'll see it automatically disabled this and this. The arcade mode and the second monitor for Backbox both have to be disabled for the future Pinball Backbox to be completely disabled. And then that way you can properly, run this setup for a single screen setup. Okay? So all I got to do now is I just run the table. And then after the table's loaded up, if everything's working correctly and detected correctly, then the PuP-Pack will start up almost right away. And then about maybe around 6 seconds later, you should, maybe 10 seconds. It's different for everyone, depending how fast your computer is. You'll see the PuP-Pack appear in-game, in this case on the HUD and on the Backbox as well. Okay?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
So on my other screen, I've already seen the PuP-Pack appear. And let's just see. And there you go. On the top left, you can see the PuP-Pack is now appearing. It's now being streamed in. So you can see the high quality video. And if you look in the Backbox, you can see now it's showing on there. Because that's definitely not like normal Future Pinball. Like, that's actually the Pinup Player PuP-Pack being displayed and streaming in. And you can also see it on the apron. Because those are the features that are enabled by default. Okay? So therefore, if you're playing in, let's say, cabinet view, right? Then it would be not really visible except on the apron, like I showed before. If you're playing in desktop view, well, the top left HUD is where you're going to see it. If you're playing in VR, well, then you're going to see it on the Backbox. All right? So that's the idea, is that it can work for almost any setup. And as you can see, it's just running and playing like normal, no problem. I'm just keeping the sound down a little bit. And there you go. Doesn't that look awesome? Like, just amazing. There you go. And now it's got it recentered so it looks correctly. Like, it just looks perfect.
Show yourself, pincushion.
Awesome. And that's it, guys. That's basically how PupStream works. And when I exit the table, it automatically closes down Pinup Player for you, and then you're all good to go. And that's basically it for PupStream, guys. It's not complicated. It's just you have to have things set up correctly with Pinup Player, and then when that's set up correctly, you can just leave it. You don't have to keep doing that every time. You have to make sure the settings are set in your this guy here. And if you use it all the time, you don't have to change that again. You can leave it. And then same thing with the PuP-Pack, right? You just set that one time, and then you leave it. You don't have to keep going back and forth and doing this over and over again. So it's just a matter of getting the setup correct the first time, and then usually you're pretty good after that. All right, so that's about it for PupStream then. All right, so I mentioned before about DOFLinx. If you have DOFLinx running on your system, you have to make sure that it's completely closed before running a PinEvent table. So that way you know for sure it's not going to interfere with your DOF feedback and lighting, and it may even cause a crash of some sort. I've seen that happen as well. So just make sure it's closed before running a PinEvent table, and you can use a front end like Pinup Popper to actually manage that, either on a per table basis or just for all tables if you want, so that you don't want it running at all, or you can have DOFLinx not run at all, and then have it only start up when you need it, like say for Pinball FX or whatever else you're using it with, right? So yeah, and so we'll get more into the front end bit later on. That could be covered in the Popper and Baller Installer Tips Guide, which gives you great examples of how to do that, and that's of course included in my, let me see, in my Setup and Guides folder, and it's right there, okay? All right. All right, so how to install and use a PinEvent V2 table and PuP-Pack. So you've downloaded a PinEvent table, and you're like, okay, what the heck do I do with all this stuff? So this is describing everything right here, but simply put, you'll have basically files like this. You may have a zip file, and then it'll be the same thing as I'm showing you here. So basically the table file, and it even tells you in here, so you copy the table file to the tables folder, yay! And then it'll tell you the config for POV. So you pick the one that's appropriate if you're playing in desktop, or if you're playing in cabinet or cabinet with no apron, basically making it fit a little better. So you just pick the one that's correct for what your setup is using. So I'm using desktop, so that goes into your BAM config folder, okay? So this is what will have the better POV or camera views for your table. And it has to be named exactly the same as the table file. Because the way it works is when BAM loads up, it looks for any file in there named after the table file name. If there isn't one that exists, it'll create one based on your default BAM settings, okay? Whereas I've already preset everything nicely for you, so that's why those are in there, okay? And then you need to copy the PuP-Pack into your PUP videos folder as it says there, which I've already done, as we all know. And that's already in my PUP videos, as you can see. And there's a whole lot of PuP-Packs in here, all right? And then when you copy the PuP-Pack in there, you just make sure you choose the right option. So in this case, I was using the desktop PupStream. And once you do that, you leave it alone. You never have to touch it ever again. Unless you are doing a completely different setup down the line, and that's a different story. And I think that covered all the files. Oh, yes, you have to go on DOF config tool and make sure that you generate you log into DOF config tool, and then you generate a config for updated files. You download those. It would be in a zip file, and then you go to your direct, where is it? Yeah. So in my case, direct output and config, and then you just put the new files in there and you overwrite the old ones. And then that way you have the latest DOF configs for, because it might be a brand new table that I release, and then you don't have the configs for it, right? So you have to be sure. So make sure you do that. Don't assume you have everything up to date, because sometimes they get updated regularly and you may not have what you need, right? So that's as far as installing the files. That's everything you need to do. Now, every PinEvent table has table options in the table script. So make sure you check those, because you may want to enable or disable certain things, or maybe the cosmetics will be different. Like for example, on the Sonic table, you can disable the Sonic ball if you want. Uh, I usually have lighting options in there for ambient and diffusion lighting. That's the BAM lighting settings. So these at least allow you to change them to exactly what you want, and I give the ranges here. So that way, because every time it starts up, it overwrites the settings, right? So you can still make these two adjustments if you want for your personal preference. And then other things maybe on here for performance or effects. Raycast shadows, I highly recommend if you're having a problem with it running smooth on your system. This is the first thing you should disable. And then when you start up the table, then you go into the BAM menu, add-ons, config ball shadows, and then inside there's raycast shadows. You have to do both. You have to do this first, and then you go into the BAM menu while playing, because this is what enables it when it starts up, right? And yeah, and then you can adjust your static desktop camera if you want for when it starts up. That's desktop only. And then you have maybe the zoom out for the multi-ball, and then if you want, you can disable PinEvent settings completely if you want. If for whatever reason you don't want them used, like maybe you want a copy of the table with the PuP-Pack, and you want a copy of the table that doesn't use it at all, and then so you can just have one copy with this disabled, and that's easy enough, right? And of course, these are the custom settings I mentioned before, that if you want to have this table use different things than the global settings are using for PinEvent, then you can do that in here. Okay? And as I did before when I ran the table demo, so when you run the table the first time, you're going to have to adjust your PUP SSF sound levels by home and end and page up and page down. Because you heard when I turned the volume all the way down, you can still hear the mechanical sounds. That's from the PuP-Pack. The PuP-Pack is completely separate from your main Future Pinball sound levels, right? So you have to adjust your Future Pinball levels so that they match up nicely with the PUP SSF. And then from there, you can adjust the main volume from Windows. That will affect everything, right? And that's about it. If you have night mode enabled, you can toggle that with your night mode key. But that's about it. And then you should be good to go. And you can run the game like normal. And if everything's set up correctly, it'll all start up and display, just like I showed you earlier. And well, that's about it. We're kind of at the end there. The only thing I wanted to do was show what I was talking about with Pinup Popper there. So if you go into the Pinup Popper guide, hold on a second, where are you? All right. So if you open up the Pinup Popper guide, I don't know if I have it. Oh, do I already have it open? Oh, I do have it open already. Okay. From the last video I did. So this is located in your setup and guides, the Popper and Baller installer tips. And, if you have Baller installer, this is very handy because it has some important information on there. But it also helps explain, about, DMDExt and DOFLinx, like I already mentioned. The same things in the Backbox and how you need it disabled. So it's basically the same thing I already just mentioned to you guys. And so now it's explaining how Popper's launch and close scripts are what allow you to make changes. Is the bottom line. So you can actually have the launch script give you options for enabling or disabling whatever you want, or launching specific programs. And then the games manager is where you'll enable or disable those features. So I have launch script examples. A portion that shows how to disable the backbox, how to close DOFLinx, how to run DMDExt if you want to, or how to not run DMDExt, if you have it running all the time, and then there's extra settings in here as well that you can use that I included in the baller installer or a popper and baller guide here. And these are extra commands you can use to control future pinball settings from the popper launch script if you want. That's more advanced stuff beyond the scope of this video, but the information is there for you guys if you want to make use of it. And then the idea is that if you had one big launch script that's going to handle everything. So this example here I have is going to basically enable the future pinball backglass by default, but then if you choose to have it disabled, then you add PinEvent into the games manager, and then it will disable the future pinball backbox, and it will also disable or close DOFLinx, I should say. It'll close it completely if you have it running. And then in this section, I have it chosen where if I use future pinball DMDExt in the second option, then that will run DMDExt. So in this setup, in this script, it's not going to run DMDExt automatically. You have to tell it to do that. Previously, we had it set up where DMDExt was ran automatically for all tables, and then you had to tell it when not to. And you can still do that. The examples are in this guide to do that if you want. All right. And then in the close script, then you can re-enable the future pinball backbox if you want. And then you can force close DMDExt if you ran it, just in case. So yeah, that's basically what these examples are trying to show you. Okay? And basically that's what this is describing. You know, how to add the games manager, all that. Basically everything I just described. So you go to games manager, you add PinEvent to the first one. That will then make sure that this table will automatically disable the backbox and disable DOFLinx. And then if you add future pinball DMDExt, then that means this table will also run DMDExt. Now, if you're using a PuP-Pack and you don't have a dedicated DMD display, you don't want to use this, okay? This is if you have a dedicated real DMD and or LCD DMD display, and you want to do that with the PuP-Pack at the same time. Or if you don't want to run a PuP-Pack at all, then you can also add that there as well and run the DMD only. And that's about it. Now, this is literally what I just got done talking about, you know, so how to do that. So I'll just show you real quick what I'm talking about so you can visually see it. So if you go into your, you know, pinup system popper setup, so you'll be in here, and then the idea is, you know, if you go to popper setup and you go to emulators under future pinball, and you look at your launch script, this is exactly what I was just talking about. You know, the first part enables the registry by default, but then if you choose to have it disabled by entering PinEvent, it then disables the registry. And then the same idea for if you want to disable DOFLinx, you can add an extra bit in there. If for the second option, if you add in future pinball DMDExt, then it'll run DMDExt. You know, so that's all in here right now. I don't have the DOFLinx currently one in there because I don't run it normally. But again, you can add that if you want. And then the close script, again, re-enables the backbox if you want to have that in there. And then you can also have it disable DMDExt. Okay? And you can change that. You guys can change that however you like. It doesn't have to be what we show you. And then Games Manager, when you click on that, and then when you go into like your table, whatever tables you have in there, you click on the table, and then you can go down to the parameters here, and then if you click that or you type it in, it has to match exactly. PinEvent, spelled just like that, or if you have it in a drop down, you can select it. And same thing for future pinball DMDExt. In this case, this means it's going to run DMDExt because of my launch script. Okay. Now you may have another option like no DMDExt, depending on what your launch script was. The older version always ran DMDExt no matter what, unless you had this in here. If you had this, then it told you not to run DMDExt. So you can do it either way you want. Okay. So then when you're done picking which, or you pick nothing. You know, you can have just nothing at all, and that means you know, it won't do either or, and then it'll just launch it like normal. It's up to you, however you want to have things set up. Okay, and then when if you're happy with that, then you hit save, and then you hit close, And then when you launch Popper, it's going to launch Future Pinball, and then it's going to disable or enable the features based on what you added in Games Manager for that table. Okay? And again, you can have it where you have to do it on a per table basis, and that's by default how it's set up. But I mean, you could have it where it's doing that for all tables, or if you want to add a separate, say Future Pinball PinEvent emulator that does everything the same way, but you just change the launch script to always disable the back box. You know what I mean? Like, you can do that as well. Like, you don't have to settle for what we show you. That's the whole point, is that you guys have the flexibility to do whatever you want. And that's about it. That's all I need to say about Popper. And yeah, so I think that's the end of our guide here. So that's a basic overview of PinEvent's features, what they do, how to set up some certain things. I know it seems like it's a lot, but depending, if you have Baller Installer and you have it fully updated with the latest version, which is we're now up to Pinup Player 1.5 and Popper 1.5, if that's fully updated, then most of this is already set up for you anyway. But if you're not sure, then, follow what I showed you in the video and make sure everything's been set up for Pinup Player properly. You have your PuP-Pack installed and the right options selected correctly. And then you have your front end, if you're using that, set up correctly for the table, so that it has the right options being used when you launch it. And if you're not using a front end, well, then that's even simpler. You just make sure you launch it with a PinEvent PuP-Pack. If you want to have the table use a PuP-Pack, if you don't want it to use a PuP-Pack, but you still have a multi-screen multi-screen cabinet, then you can choose this option or this option, and then it'll run the table like normal with no PuP-Pack. So that's why these are here, to make it easier. And then you can customize these however you want. Read more about that in this file here. Okay. So yeah, lots of options, guys. I know it can be overwhelming. That's why I made these guides. Just so that you can always come back to them, and then be able to take it as you need to. Actually, I was in the wrong guide here. Hold on. Okay, that makes more sense now. Okay, I was wondering about that. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so this is the actual guide at the end, the PinEvent V2 guide. So what this is telling you is you can use debug mode if you're having problems. So I'll actually show that briefly. And then if you're still having problems, you could go to my the help guide, which is this one right here. So, but I'll show you the debugger really quick. Okay, so when you're running a Future Pinball table, especially a PinEvent table, if you're having problems, well then what you do is you run it with the debugger. Actually, we're already up here. So to do that, you just have the table running. You don't use a front end. And then you just launch the table with F9. Or you could just do it right here. Okay? And then when the table runs, you're going to have green text on the left side. Now that's basically the things I've added to the table script to tell you information as the table's being run. So that way you'll know if there's a problem with PuP settings or DOF settings or PinEvent settings. It'll tell you exactly what it's choosing to do, what it's detecting, and all PinEvent tables have that. Regular tables won't have that stuff, but PinEvent tables do. So so you can see right away it's telling you what it chose, what option it chose for the PuP-Pack. It detected it, and now it's enabling the SSF features. The ball rolling sounds are enabled. The tilt bob key is enabled. So yeah, I mean it goes by quick, but then you can still see whatever it did in a text file that I'll show you afterward. So while you play the table, it's going to show you extra stuff like SSF and all sorts of stuff that's going on while you're playing the table. Okay, so that's normal. Now it's going slow-mo right now because we have the shield ball. That's why it's running slow. That's intentional for those who may or may not know. It's supposed to do that only for like a short amount of time. Yeah. All right. Anyways, so when you run it in Debugger and you exit the table, so what it does is it will write a text file to wherever you have the table located. So in this case, let's go to our tables folder. And let's take a look. So we have, there it is, the Future Pinball Debug text log. So if you click on that, and then you look at it, so this is everything that this was displaying, right? So it shows what version of BAM we're using. what version of PhysX the table is using, what profile it's using for PhysX flipper settings, and then it says, yep, it found a PinEvent Settings text file, and then that means it's going to use the settings from that, the global settings. It verified what PuP-Pack it was trying to find, and then it found it just fine. So that means it's starting the PuP-Pack, and it's telling you what version of the PuP-Pack it's using. Because if you are using, and that's important actually for me to point out, you have to make sure you use the newest table and the matching PuP-Pack that came with the table. If you use the wrong version of the PuP-Pack, it won't be loaded. The table will ignore it altogether, and it won't even load it. And that's what this will tell you. If you have the wrong version, or it can't find it, it will tell you that in the debugger, because it checks this file here, this version file, to see what version is on here. And the table script is specific to look for that. I may do an update in the future to the table and the PuP-Pack, or both, like one or the other, and then it's still going to make a check to make sure it's the right PuP-Pack that's been updated to match with that version of the table. They may not always have the same number, but just make sure you have the one that's included with the table, and you should be fine. And if there is a problem, it will tell you that in the debugger here. It'll say cannot be found, requires PuP-Pack 1.8, blah blah blah, and it'll let you know. And it's telling you what option PuP-Pack you're using, so that way you know in case you chose the wrong one, maybe why certain things aren't running correctly. And then it's telling you desktop settings are being applied because we're in desktop mode, and then it just tells you everything that's been enabled. PuP-SSF is enabled. Future pinball sounds are turned off because we're using PuP-SSF. PuPDMD is enabled. PuPStream was enabled. DOF is enabled. And everything was started up, no problem. Now, if certain things are not detected, like DOF or PUP, then it'll say that they're disabled here. So that's the whole point of why the debugger was set up and why I put all the extra work so that you could see all this stuff. Because it helps. Like, I've had so many times where someone could get something working. I told them to run this, and right away I was like, oh, well, your band's out of date. Or, oh, well, it can't find your text file. Or, oh, well, you're using custom settings on the table instead of using the global settings. Or whatever, so it's very handy. So it's something to keep in mind for any PinEvent table. This is very, very handy. So, yeah, that's about it. If you're having additional problems, go to the FAQ guide, as I mentioned before. And that's about it, really, guys. I'm glad you stuck around throughout this part, throughout this video. I know it's probably a long one, but there's a lot of info to cover. A lot of features. There's, not everyone uses the same features. You have cabinet players, you have VR players, you have desktop players, and I got to cover all of them, right? So, I don't want you guys looking at these video guides or the tutorials or anything else and being like, oh my God, that's way too much info. And it's like, well, it's info for everyone, not just for you, right? So that's why I have chapters in the videos, so that way you guys can go to exactly the parts that you need that are important. And you have these written guides, which frankly, no one else in the whole damn virtual pinball hobby does anything like this at all. And the information's right there, guys. So there's no excuse. I'm sorry, but there's no excuse. Take a little bit of your time and read through what you need to know, so that way you understand how this stuff works and what you need to do to get it to run correctly. It's simple to set up, and once it's set up and it's working, you don't have to touch it after that, right? So, but if you're having problems, then the information's here for you. So that's about all I really got to say, guys. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. Try out these PinEvent tables, man. They're not to toot my own horn, but now they're updated with PhysX physics, so that they play right up there with the best of the visual pinball tables now. They have modern lighting and shadows, so they look amazing, especially in VR. Full DOF support. Modern PuP-Pack displays for any setup. Everyone can use it. Everyone can. You have options. It's a real great showpiece, and it's worth the effort, guys. It really, really is. If you've never ran Future Pinball before, it's worth it for these tables. It really is. And if you're a single screen user and you're kind of intimidated by all this, well, I'm going to have a separate tutorial and video just for you guys. If I can find where the heck. Oh, there we are. Which is going to be in your setup and guides, and that's going to be a separate one. That's going to be the single screen and PuP-Packs guide. You know, similar to what I already did in this video, but you know, it's going to be geared more towards you guys, a little less overwhelming. You know, and that's about it. So thanks for tuning in, guys. See you in my next video. Bye.